The first section they go into detail about is about what they call the geometry of the naturalization background. They say the N400 backlogs has steadily increased in the past decade, but surged significantly in fiscal year 2016 and 2017, resulting in a pending inventory of 652,431 applications at the end of 2019. The shutdown of offices caused by the pandemic only made things worse. Unanticipated surges in applications were not met with additional resources. Let me repeat that. Unanticipated, there's some anticipated ones that they didn't do, but let's say unanticipated surges in applications were not met with additional resources, although efforts have been made to create efficiencies while maintaining integrity. The strain of expanded interview requirements has impacted processing times too. As you know, they're doing interviews for I-730, family of asylees. They're doing employment-based interviews now. They're pushing interviews for a lot of other categories. So that affects naturalization as well. Longer completion rates and lean staffing have also contributed to the increase in processing time. So in fiscal year 2019, USCIS naturalized 833,000 new citizens, its highest number since fiscal year 2009. That's an interesting stat. The increase would present a considerable challenge to meaningfully reducing the original backlog. They were trying, but the financial constraints avoid that. In order to simply keep pace with the incoming caseload, the agency must not only achieve a personal best, quote unquote, in completions, but also overcome a perennially challenging issue, lack of resources, by reconfiguring the way it processes N400s. So in 1990, this is going back. So it seems like back in the 90s when it was a separate backlog and serious issue that happened, they're saying that they lowered their standards. So a lot of mistaken people got citizenship, even people with criminal history or deportable. And so that's the thing that happens. Like, how much do we focus on make sure we do it right to avoid that happening? How much do we deal with the backlogs? Because it's an important benefit. People who get citizenship could vote and be full-on Americans, and that's not right to hold them back just because of agency backlog. So these two objectives are problematic. In 1995, faced with mounting application backlogs and external political pressures, the Legacy Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, prioritized production at the expense of accuracy, naturalizing 179,000 individuals without a definitive criminal history check conducted by the FBI. Wow, that's something. Which resulted in the naturalization of 10,800 individuals who, quote, had been arrested for at least one felony offense. That's a lot, 10,800 felonies. Wow. The Department of Justice Office of Inspector determined that the INS's focus on quantity over quality resulted in inadequate training, reduced safeguards, and hasty implementation of unproven processing techniques. So they're trying to fix that with E-lists, but who knows what's going to happen there. They say USCIS defines backlog as a number of pending applications and petitions that have been in process longer than the agency's processing times. The agency further reduces the number by removing applications and petitions that are outside of its control, e.g. pending response to requests for evidence reexamination. So when it's really important, when they're calculating backlogs at USCIS, they take out cases that have RFEs pending. So the backlog is probably even longer than the numbers they put here because of the way the statistics are inventoried here. So that's something that was interesting that came out in this report. They say USCIS historically experiences a temporary increase in naturalization filings in presidential election years and when fee increases are proposed, followed by reduced filings in the next fiscal year. So I was somewhat surprised when USCIS projected a 6% decrease in naturalization from fiscal year 2015 to fiscal year 2019, despite an anticipated fee increase and the 2016 election. So that was really weird. So 2015, that was Obama time, I think. So they knew a presidential election was going to happen when the things go up. And there was a fee increase happening, which always does that. They put a decrease of 6% projected, but actual recipients were 25% higher than what was projected in the previous year. So in 2016. So it just who's running this show? how did that decision get made? In October 2017, USCIS expanded in-person interview requirements for certain adjustment of status applicants, blah, blah, resulting in considerable additional delays. So that was a messed up situation. Now, we all know citizenship's backed up, but then the problem comes, what about removal of condition I-751? The only thing worse than the citizenship backlogs is actually the I-751 backlogs for removal of conditions. They have a section on that. They say, in addition, the presence of a concurrently pending I-751 in an applicant's record appears to lengthen the N400 processing time. Well, they explain what the I-751 is. Procedural hurdles. Officers are instructed to adjudicate the petition. So what happens is officers can adjudicate both the I-751 and 400 if possible there. But with COVID, I think it's gone stricter. But in the past, I would just say, hey, do both at the same time. They do it. They say procedural hurdles may prevent officers from adjudicating these benefit requests concurrently. So this is really important. For example, as USCIS is increasing moving to an electronic environment to process N400s, the physical file that contains the pending I-751 still in paper format may not be available at the naturalization interview. So that's the problem that happens. They have the file at the field office when you're doing your N400. Do they have the I-751 file or not? That could be a major issue in delaying things. In addition, an officer may wish to interview a petitioning spouse on a jointly filed I-751. However, due to time constraints or failure to notify the applicant to bring the spouse, they may need to reschedule and continue the case and push it down even more. Then they talk about insufficient staffing levels in facilities. Although USCIS has almost doubled its authorized staff since fiscal year 2009, it remains unable to process all cases within time projections due to insufficient staffing levels in facilities. The agency has also been unable to fill the authorized positions due to lags in the hiring process and the need to backfill existing positions, higher than anticipated staff attrition rates at certain field offices, especially now. Like, it's hard being a USCIS officer with the craziness going on. So the attrition is a serious issue. Declining completions per hour work is a major issue. Then they say, however, technical and functional difficulties in the rollout of the N400s and E-list, as well as enhanced vetting requirements, result in longer completion rates. So, filing the N400 online, I still file paper. I did a poll on the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox Facebook page for private practitioners. I think around like 80% of practitioners still file with paper. The ones who do it online were adamant that it's better. I've tried doing online I-90s, N400s. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not sure why it's so difficult, but I just stick with the paper and make it. But we have to make the switch eventually. But here it says there have been functional difficulties in the N400. On average, it currently takes officers approximately 30 minutes longer to adjudicate the N400 than it did in 2010. So that's a major factor. When I started, the N400 was like 4 pages or how many pages? Now it's like 20. Some key factors leading to increased completion rates include the growing complexity of the naturalization adjudication process, issues with the deployment of E-list, and the removal of numerical case production metrics for employee evaluations in fiscal year 2014. So they don't keep track if someone's doing work fast or not and getting things done. Also in 2014, the length of the N400 doubled from 10 pages to 20 pages, which took more time to verify. However, as noted, certain field offices have exceeded their physical space capacity and cannot accommodate the additional staff even needed to increase N400 education because the existing until the facilities are made bigger. So just there's practical components here that create a problem.